Hello YouTube and welcome back to another alternate history video, and today I got the 1980 presidential election, which of course was held between President Jimmy Carter and Republican challenger Ronald Reagan. Over in this scenario here I got Ted Kennedy, the senator from Massachusetts, who actually did run in the Democratic primary in 1980. He challenged Jimmy Carter but was unsuccessful in dethroning him from the nomination. However, in this alternate scenario I do got Kennedy as a nominee if he did defeat Carter in the primary. So, like I said, this is 1980, so of course Jimmy Carter's popularity went down, and you had the Iran hostage situation. You still had a stagflated economy that started under the previous administrations, and it continued under Carter, and his popularity definitely took a dip, and it definitely helped propel Reagan to a landslide victory, and of course got re-elected in a landslide against Mondale. And so I believe in this scenario not much would change. They're probably pretty similar because of Carter's popularity being horrible. And like I said, I think it would definitely be similar. I think Kennedy could probably win a state or two more than Carter did, but I think that's about it. I think Reagan would definitely sweep most of the map still. But anyway, let's get into it. So I believe Reagan is going to take the West Coast here still. Washington, Oregon, California. Washington could probably get a little closer because of Kennedy having his appeal in the suburbs, but I think Reagan definitely had a little more better appeal, definitely in both of his runs. So I believe he would still win these states, and definitely his home state of California and Alaska here, as well as the Mountain West, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah have been Republican strongholds now for many years. Same with Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, as well as Nevada. All these states weren't as populated as they are today and were more Republican leaning back then, so I believe they would stick with Reagan, as well as the Great Plains, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Excuse me, Reagan definitely turned the South red after it was solidly Democratic for many years and went for Carter in '76 most of it, but Reagan was definitely able to turn the South red, and it continued into the 90s and definitely into today, so I believe Texas would be solid for him. I believe he would take Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, states that he won in the real scenario, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina, the state of Virginia, Missouri, Indiana, and that's about it for at least the South. Now, Ted Kennedy states, I believe he would take Hawaii. It did go to Carter, but Reagan actually did win in '84. But I think since it says 1980, I think Kennedy would hang on to it since Carter did win it. I think Reagan would take a state like Illinois. It was more Republican leaning back then because Republicans did better in the suburbs in the state before it got really populated and then turned into a solid Democratic state today. So I believe they would hang on to Reagan. I think Reagan would take Iowa, very rural and evangelical. Reagan a great supporter statewide, so I believe that would hang on to him. I believe Ted Kennedy would take his home state of Massachusetts. I believe it did go for Reagan. Let me double check that. See here. And in fact did go for Reagan. Very narrowly though. It was, yeah, look at that, 3,000 votes. Or at least that was John McCain there, but yeah, this was a narrow victory, you see right there. So I believe with Kennedy on the ticket, he would take his home state. And I think he would win Rhode Island because I believe Carter won that as well. It was a pretty solid margin, I would say, so I believe Kennedy would win it, being from the Northeast here, especially Massachusetts. I believe Connecticut actually did go for Reagan. And it did, at least by 10 points. I could definitely say it narrowing up because of Kennedy being on the ballot, but I think because of the solid margin went for Reagan, I think it would hang on to it, but I think it would narrow up a little bit because of Kennedy's presence on the ticket. I believe New Jersey was also a Reagan state. And sure enough it was, and that was an even bigger margin than Connecticut, so I believe it would hang on to Reagan. I think Delaware was won by Carter, though. No, it actually wasn't. So Reagan also did win Delaware, however, it was only a few points. I can maybe see Kennedy flipping it because of how close it was, because of his presence on the ticket being from Massachusetts. Maybe it could still hang on to Reagan because it tended to be a more suburban Republican state back in the day. But I don't know. I think that's a tough one. It's definitely a toss-up because, like I said, it was only decided by a couple points or so. Right there, you see 47 to 44. Reagan actually won all the counties, but it still was a pretty close race. So, like I said, I think Delaware's kind of a tough one, but if I had to go with my gut, I think Reagan would narrowly hang on to it. I could definitely see it flipping Kennedy, but I just think since it's tended to be a more suburban Republican state, much like New Jersey and Connecticut back then, I think it would narrowly hang on to Reagan, but you can comment below what you think would happen in it. But I could definitely see it going either way. I think Maryland, though, would go for Kennedy because I believe it did go for Carter. And it did by a few points. So I think because of that, Kennedy would take it. Probably by an even bigger margin being from Massachusetts here. And D.C., of course. Minnesota up here was won by Carter. Of course, he had Walter Mondale as his running mate, and that helped propel him to victory here. I'm going to look at the exact margin, see how exactly close it was. So you see there's at least by 3 or 4 points. And you see Reagan definitely performed good, like over here in the West. Well, Carter did better over here, like where Minneapolis is in the more suburban counties. I could see Kennedy winning it because he definitely has that liberal appeal, like in the Minneapolis suburbs, that you need to win the state. Maybe Reagan could win it because Mondale wouldn't be on the ticket, but I think because it would be in 1980, I think Kennedy actually would win it. It would definitely be narrow, I believe, even more than it was, but I think Kennedy would have the right appeal, especially in the Minneapolis suburbs, to hang on to even without Mondale on the ballot. If it was 1984, I'd give it to Reagan, which I actually did, because I did do a Kennedy and Reagan 1984 scenario a while back. But with this being 1980, though, I think it would hang on to Kennedy narrowly. Wisconsin and Michigan, I believe they were won both by Reagan. He definitely had great blue-collar appeal, and Reagan Democrats turned out for him. He definitely had great appeal here in the Rust Belt, and I think it would hang on to it since he did win them. Because, like I said, he definitely had great statewide appeal in the rural areas and with the working class in the state. So I think that would hang on to Reagan as well as Ohio. That rural and working class appeal that Reagan was able to have both times. I think Vermont and New Hampshire would definitely narrow up because of Kennedy's presence, but they tended to be more suburban type Republican states, kind of like Connecticut and New Jersey back in the day. So I think this would hang on to Reagan, but I'd definitely say it narrowing up with Kennedy on the ballot. But I think because they tend to be more Republican-leaning states, because Rockefeller Republicanism was definitely prevalent in these states back then. Excuse me, I think they would hang on to Reagan. The state of Maine did go for Reagan by a few points, 45 to 42. Like I was talking about these other states, I definitely see it narrowing up. Maybe Kennedy could pull it off, but I think since these northeastern states tended to be more Republican back then, it would stay that way, but it could definitely be another toss-up, quite like Delaware, in my opinion, but I think it would hang on to Reagan, especially with it being 1980 and Carter's unpopularity. West Virginia here was more of a Democratic state back then, and it was won by Carter because he definitely had a southern appeal being from Georgia, so he was able to resonate good here. West Virginia has been really working class over the years with a lot of coal mining industry there. I could definitely say narrowing up because Kennedy being a northeastern Democrat maybe wouldn't have as much appeal as Carter there. I'm going to look at the exact margin. So 49 to 45. Honestly, I kind of see Reagan flipping this state because, like I was saying, Kennedy is a northeastern Democrat, and I don't really see him having that enthusiasm in these more southern states like Carter did, because Kennedy was actually a bit more liberal than Carter. So for that reason, I think West Virginia would actually flip to Reagan. It did go Reagan in '84, so for that reason, I think it could go him 4 years earlier, even though it went for Carter because of Carter being a Southern Democrat, so he had better appeal in the state. But Kennedy being more of a liberal Northeasterner, I think Reagan would have the better appeal here and actually flip it since it was pretty close there, as you see. So anyway, like I said, I think that would flip Reagan because of Kennedy's presence. I think Kennedy would actually flip New York in this scenario. It was won by Reagan. But because of Kennedy, like I said, being that Northeastern Democrat from Massachusetts, I think it would definitely improve in New York City and the cities in the state, while Reagan would do good upstate, I believe. But I think it would actually narrowly flip Kennedy because of his presence being a Northeastern liberal. And this just leaves the states of Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Florida. I think Georgia, which did go for Carter, was his home state. I think it would flip Reagan in this scenario because of Carter not being on the ticket. I think Georgia would definitely do a protest vote because I think they would be upset about Carter losing the primary to Kennedy. So I think a lot of voters that would vote for Carter would have gone over to Reagan just as a protest vote against Kennedy winning the nomination. And also Reagan went in '84. And same with state of Florida, I believe that was solid go him. A great statewide support. The exact margin was definitely solid there, as you see. It wasn't even close. Just a lot of blowback against Carter, and like I said, his unpopularity from the Iran hostage crisis and stagflation would definitely help Reagan in the state. So that would be a solid win for him. And that just leaves the state of Pennsylvania, which I believe would be tight, because Kennedy would definitely have his appeal like better in the suburbs, being from Massachusetts, having his better northeastern appeal. But Reagan also had a great appeal in the state too. That's why I kind of see it being close. But because of it being a 7-point margin there, as you see, I think it would hang on to Reagan because of the stagflation and things like that going on. But I definitely see it getting a little closer, but I still see it tilting or leaning Reagan because of the stagflation and things like that going on. But anyway, there's the final map with Reagan still winning a landslide 452 to Ted Kennedy's 86. So Ted Kennedy does do a little better than Carter in this scenario, flipping states like New York but Reagan also flipping states like West Virginia because of, like I said, Kennedy being more of a northeastern liberal. I don't really see him having that appeal in West Virginia like Carter did. But anyway, if you agree with this or not, just comment below. I thank you for watching. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you haven't, and I'll see you next time.